So now we're going to talk about agriculture, food processing, and production in the state. So did you know that last year, revenues from cattle in the state equaled $669 million? Did you know that? You all clearly knew it because you're saying nothing. Okay, so what do you think the revenues were from dairy? Somebody shout out a figure. What? 400? Somebody else? Hey, who's cheating? Who knew that? Who is that person? 553 million. Some of the stats from this, and we're going to start. We have Katie Koba, who is the Director of Agriculture for the state of Oregon. Katie is also a former champion rodeo rider, which I just could not keep from saying. Stacy Davies, who is the marketing director for Country Natural Beef, and okay, we'll let you keep the hat. I was worried about the shadow on his face, but he's got this whole country western music singer thing going on. And then Sam Tannehill, who is the director of viticulture and winemaking for Rex Hill Winery and the founder of A to Z Winery, and then Andrew Borenstein, who's the co-owner of Borenstein Seafood. So, Katie, let's start with you. One of the stats that I was really shocked by when I was reading about this was, well, one, the agricultural industry since 2002 has grown 20% in the state, and that 80% of the products that we create, we export. That astounded me. Will you just give us a sense of the footprint of the agricultural sector?
Sure. First of all, congratulations to the table for identifying the 10 products. We were a little surprised that it started out gin, beer, wine, beer, but that's okay. So Oregon agriculture is a very, very important part of our state's economy. We're about over $5 billion in terms of sales just off the farm, and when you factor in value added, which is processing, and I'll talk about that a little bit more, moving product to market, we actually represent agriculture in Oregon 15% of our state's economy. As Chris mentioned, 80% leaves our state. The 20% that stays here, we're obviously very passionate about. Our picture of the Portlandia stars as an example. So we are very, very dependent on diverse markets, local markets, national markets, and international markets. Of that 80% that leaves our state, half of that moves into an international market.
Wow.
So we are a global entity. We're competitive on a global basis, and Oregon products are very, very well known for being high quality. People that are moving into upper middle class, these are products that people want in Oregon, people want in the United States, and people want around the world.
Well, and one of the things you talked about when we were on the phone was the demand in Asia, in particular, driven by their population growth, which I think is fascinating. So we are really positioned to continue to benefit from that, yes?
We're positioned terrifically here in the state of Oregon because of our location to Asia. And when you think about a 5-hour plane ride from Hong Kong gets you to half of the world's population, it's pretty mind-boggling. So we are well positioned to get products into those markets. We're active in those markets. Japan is still Oregon's #1 international market, but we're also moving fresh blueberries into Korea, the only state in the United States that's doing that right now. We're moving live Dungeness crab into Asia. We're moving all kinds of products into that growing market. And the other thing to remember is as buildings are being built in Asia, they're losing their own farmland. So when I started as director, I hate to almost say it, over a decade ago, people in Oregon were concerned that China was going to be producing food for the world. And what we're seeing now is China is importing their food because they cannot produce enough to feed their own population.
It's really fascinating. So you've got this one driver that's driven by population growth and exports. Now, let's talk about value add. What does that mean? So we create a lot of food products here, Stacy. What does it mean when we're able to add value to that? Can you just tell me what that concept means and what our opportunities look like?
There's a lot of opportunities. 500,000 mama cows, 527,000 mama cows in the state of Oregon. We ship all of those calves to other states and other places to finish and process. Country Natural Beef, family ranchers created a co-op 28 years ago to keep that value in the state of Oregon and in the Northwest. We don't have a processing plant in the state of Oregon, so we use one in Washington, which is a very close neighbor and partner. We could double the value. The beef industry is almost $1 billion. I think in 2014 we'll be $1 billion in sales from the state of Oregon. Wow. Because the cattle market increased so much. We'll overtake nursery as #1 once again. We could double that if we processed and kept those finishing and processing dollars in the state of Oregon.
So I want to come back in a minute and talk about what that would take. Sam, you used the image, okay, so if I grow a grape here in Oregon, I can sell it for a certain amount. If I turn it into wine, the jobs created and the profits created grows exponentially. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure, and I think one of the important points as well is the profit comes back into the state. A to Z Wineworks sells in 50 states and 18 international markets, and it's really great to be able to sell those wines, those value-added wines, back into the state. I think for me, when I look at value-added, there's an economic piece where we can achieve a 300% to 450% value growth from farm gate, growing a ton of grapes to making it into wine. I mean, that's a huge value leap. So an average price of grapes in Oregon is around $2,300, and the average price for a bottle of wine that we sell out on the market is about $16 out in the national market. Now, what's interesting is that $16 is, let me see my numbers here, it's 62% above the average Washington wine and 140% above the average California price. So there's tremendous value in Oregon wines. The other thing that I talk about when I think about value added is the fact that our wine is essentially a billboard for the state. Everywhere our wine is sold, it says Oregon on the front label, and that adds huge value to me as well because it specifies a place, it specifies a higher quality coming from here, and it puts Oregon in front of consumers not only around the United States, but not only around the world. And what that does is it attracts consumers back into the state as tourists. We just did a economic impact study in the Oregon wine industry, and from 2010, with our tourism impact at $158 million, it's gone up to $220 million last year.
Wow.
So it's not only does it bring value, but it also attracts consumers here, and for me, that's really important. You get them to the state, and they're going to take the state away with them as well, and share it with their friends all around the world and all around the country.
Amazing, amazing. Andrew, you have a seafood company that your grandfather founded?
Correct.
And did he found it in Astoria or Bellingham?
No, it was founded in Bellingham, Washington in 1934.
But you have big operations here in the state.
Yeah, but Oregon is our engine of growth, and it has been for the last 15, 20 years.
All right, so talk about where the opportunities are. I loved something you said about how your relationship to China has changed over the last 5 years.
Yeah, it was about 5 years ago where we saw China absolutely flip from a reprocessor, value-added processor, if you will, and send the fish back to the United States about 5 years ago because they kind of rose their hand and said, on second thought, we're just going to eat all of this here, and can we get some more? And they want to consume it, and it's a lot of underlining the stories that we've just heard right here. That story of, oh, we're afraid China's going to produce all the food for the world, it's absolutely, I see it every day, as China's going to consume all of the food in the world, and they love Oregon, and we should raise that flag and sell more of it to them.
And so we got opportunity with population growth. We got this crazy growing popularity of the Oregon brand that nobody on the panel seemed to understand exactly about why, but I will take it. All right, so now, if this sector, if Oregon was going to become one of the world's leading food producers and processors, what would have to happen? Stacy, you mentioned a particular piece of infrastructure that we would have to be in place. Do you guys have other thoughts about what would have to happen in the state for that to occur? You want to say something, Katie?
Sure, so the top three on my list, number one, first and foremost, and there is a panel breakout this afternoon on this topic, is water.
Water.
Water. We need water to grow crops, we need water to feed our animals, we need water to process.
And we don't have access to it right now?
We have access to water, but the majority of the water that we get now comes in the form of snowpack in the winter.
Okay.
And if we're going to continue to see climate change, we're going to have to figure out a new way to store water, both conserve and new storage opportunities. So this is a priority in the governor's budget, and it's a priority for the industry. Second is transportation, another topic that you're talking about a lot today. If we're moving live Dungeness crab to China, we've got to figure out a way to get it there, and all the other products that we ship around the world. And then finally, the third thing I would raise would be investment in research and technology development. We've disinvested in this state, in our university system. We need to reinvest. Dealing with pests, disease, water is another example, or technology development, and I'll just throw out there drones. In Japan, the primary use of unmanned aerial vehicles is in agriculture, and we see that in the future, and we ought to be taking advantage of that here in Oregon. Just one example of technology development.
We may learn more about that today. Not saying anything. Stacy?
In our industry, we need help protecting the base of the industry. There's 527,000 mama cows today. The environmental regulations, especially the Endangered Species Act, and the pressures that are brought onto our industry from that are possibly going to reduce that to half that number in the next 5 to 10 years. We need agency support throughout the government to help us defend that base production. We need agencies that help us find solutions, because there are solutions to those issues.
Stacy, can you help, for those of us who aren't attuned to that issue? I don't understand how the Endangered Species Act would affect the number of mama cows.
The potential listing of the sage grouse as an endangered species, but salmon, red band trout, the reintroduction of wolves. In 1920, there were 2.2 million sheep in Oregon. Today, there's less than 200,000. Government policy, ill-conceived for the most part, was a big part of that reduction in numbers. The same trends happening in the cattle industry.
So is there a way to kind of marry the environmentalists' desires and the desires of industry to come up with a good solution?
Absolutely, and the collaborative processes we saw in juniper and the Malheur Forest are being repeated and have been being repeated for a number of years in the cattle industry. Country Natural Beef is a co-op, 28 years of working in that realm to find ways. My challenge to those I'm working with is make the Endangered Species Act, make sage grouse a benefit to me as a rancher to produce.
Brilliant.
And if we can answer that question, we'll have solved it all. And so the economy, the environment, and the people, that triple bottom line, that's what Country Natural Beef's all about.
Brilliant, brilliant. Andrew, Sam, what else needs to happen?
I mean, I won't second what the other two panelists have said, because I certainly underline both of those, and I will maybe take up the always fun two topics, immigration and land use. We need to take a look at our land use policies and update them to reflect the changes that we're seeing in farmland and tourism, and we need to do something about immigration. We need to find a way that our employees can come safely to and from work and are insured to and from work, and we need to find a way that employers are safe to hire our employees, and we can do it legally. I know those are some are federal issues, but there's ways that the state can help us there as well, and those are critical. Without those skilled employees, we cannot make the products that grow the products that we make into food and beverages here in the state.
Fantastic. Andrew?
I would also applaud that one. That was spot on. And I heard on an earlier panel, too, about how Portland and deep water access and being able to ship containers from Portland. Our company ships over 1,000 containers every year, and we've never even thought to look at Oregon as an opportunity for that. It's all going to go out of Tacoma or British Columbia or Long Beach, California. And so a deep water port that actually is shipping frozen containers would be a great asset to the Oregon economy. And one threat that is on the seafood radar is not a threat necessarily to the growth of the industry in terms of revenue and dollars, but in job growth. We do have a lot of low-skill jobs in a seafood factory, and a $15 minimum wage would instantly incentivize us to invest into machines to start laying people off, which is kind of a trade-off.
And that automation's already happened in European countries?
Absolutely. A shrimp plant in Iceland can run the same volume of shrimp on 3 employees that we would run here on 45 employees.
So critical piece of information. Thank you, guys. This is totally fascinating to me. I've become obsessed with agriculture in the state of Oregon. It seems like a great opportunity, and it's the second highest revenues from a traded sector in the state, which kind of knocked my socks off.